Right, so I think I must have been in about year 7 years. This is 2015, 2016, 2017 at a push, right? But around that time, I remember getting an email or notification on Gmail anyway, basically, that someone tried to access my email by hacking and things like that, and I was like, okay, that's very strange. Back in the day, you know, I was quite into hacking. I wanted to be a hacker, not now, definitely not now, but back in the day, you know. So I was like myself, right, who's trying to mess with me? Because I thought it was the, you know, the big man back in the day. Definitely wasn't, but I knew the bare minimum, right? So anyway, I tracked the IP address of this person. I was like, right, okay, this is going to be probably what, like some Indian scammer or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Just from random. No, what I found was it was linked to a company called Research Machines, and I was like, hold on a minute, Research Machines, because it came up RM, but obviously I never looked into it. It stands for Research Machines, but RM now realised something. My school, when I was at school at the time, but my school uses this cloud-based software called RM Unify. So I looked into it, and it's the same thing. It's essentially a branch off from that company, and it basically deals with like essentially like everything for the software and everything for like loads of schools in the UK at least. I was like, what are they doing trying to get into my email? How would they even have this personal email I've never shared in my secondary school? But they're one of the students who they, for the schools that they, you know, provide for. Why would they do that? So, and that's basically where I concluded, you know, because I know actually, in fact, I remember. And I'll share I'll put a picture of the email up because I can't find the one and notification email where it talks about them trying to get in my email, but I do have the one where I sent the BBC News, you know, back in the day when I thought, oh, the world was so trying to ruin us and these people definitely are corrupt, but you know, so I was trying to message them being like, oh, there's something up with these, basically told them everything, and that was about it, you know. I didn't look into it any further, you know. And obviously they didn't reply back, they didn't do anything with it, which is a bit suspicious, as you know, enough as it is. And I was like, okay, very odd. So there's that. Alright, and then I remembered it about, gosh, a month ago now? Yeah, about a month ago, I remembered that email. I was like, okay, hold on, let me look back into this. And I double checked, and it was definitely the thing. I didn't make it up. You know, the IP address was for there. So then I began looking into it, and I thought, right, looking in the history of it and everything, you know, of the guy called Michael Fisher behind it, Fisher family. You know, one of the things that came up straight away, which I found very odd, because, you know, quite a pattern-y thing. I guess it makes sense initially, because given what he does with RM Unify, but he has a charity that involves children, but, you know, you have things like, you know, plenty of these billionaires things who also do these charity things, and usually charities essentially abuse children. I'm not, I won't be saying because I haven't done enough research yet to come to this conclusion of, oh, this person's bad in this company, but you know, it's not like what's okay, this is seeming a bit like it, do you know what I mean? So there's that. Another thing I found as well, which I guess supposed to have links with that, it's based in Abingdon. I was looking at some things about it, and from what I know, apparently there are underground tunnels in that city, and I was like, okay, you know, these things are underground tunnels, which I will bring up in a future video, I'm sure. It's quite an interesting thing, but that links that, and I was like, right, okay. So I'm looking further. He also does these things, he funds some science things, you know, and what is it with these tech people, especially the billionaires? I always fund these things for science, like what, you know, like the computers, do you know what I mean? But again, it further links to these tech billionaires who researching the things, you know what I mean, using science and things for some reason, is that he also you know, had his foot in the door with COVID, in the sense that he essentially found this solution for COVID testing during COVID, and I was like, why is it, you know? And I believe there's even something about, you know, back in the day of using the swabs for like implanting things and things like that, so that's a bit suspicious as well, do you know what I mean? But I guess you could just brush it off as, oh, this guy's a philanthropist, he only wants to help people. But you could have said the same thing about Bill Gates and all those other ones, and look at how that turned out. Again, I'm not saying I have definitive proof or definitive evidence, this is what I found so far, which is very strange, not everything else. And then one of the last strange things that I found that he was funding research for was for this gene thing, and I'm gonna get it up. So yeah, he created the COVID Volunteer Testing Network, which obviously helped with the COVID testing. Another thing that I found out about him as well is that he also has some part in a company called Video Loft Limited, which essentially is a cloud-based surveillance security system. You know, and I just thought surveillance as well. Very funny. Just a quick thing to add in, I did end up finding out that the name of the science company was System Biology Laboratory, and one of the things was for VDJ, and you can look into that please too, right, because I'm not a biologist or anything, so I don't know completely what I'm talking about. However, that can be used to bring harm to people, because it can be used, for example, as target specific things that need recreate things. So basically, it can be used to see things that were not harmful as harmful and cause things like death if used incorrectly or put in the wrong hands, or if you're not getting know what you're doing and you end up messing up. But the point is, it can be used nefariously. And the thing that used to fix the problem of testing during COVID was using the PCR machine. Just I'll put that there.